Chapter 14, Coding of Accounts. Key points in this chapter: codes can be numeric, a series of numbers; alphabetic, a series of letters; alphanumeric, a mixture of numbers and letters. They can be in blocks, so that they signify the types of items in the code. So let's say 1 to 100, 101 to 200, 201 to 300. They could be hierarchical, so they could be designed to signify a hierarchy that directs the user to understand what the code is. So let's say 1, 5, 9, 10. Which then would be faculty, department, section and course, or alternatively you might have things in the library that will direct you to a book on a particular shelf, whatever, made up of a number of codes, aisle 1, midway down section 1, shelf 3 or what have you. So it's like that kind of approach, really, even a hierarchical approach. Really, what you're going to have to do is read the question to determine how to construct codes. What's the code made up of? What's typically the separator between the letters and the numbers? And then what's the type of the code that you'll be asked in that. So, in terms of our objectives of codes, the double entry accounting system has the following objectives: to collate financial transactions in a manner to lead to a future action, for example, paying a supplier. So that's been covered by sections 1 to 13. Then we've got to be able to generate financial reports which allow reviewers to understand the cost and income drivers of the business to aid decision making. What are we doing, and how, what do we need to do, and how are we doing it? And also in that part as well, that generating financial reports, to assign accountability to managers in the organisation using financial metrics. And the last one is to perform operational decisions and to secure the assets. So, for example, our stock might be given a product code to be able to keep track of how much stock we have in our warehouse and if we need to reorder, or its location, or its age. We can physically verify stock and ensure that it's not stolen, but to do so we need product codes because we need to find out where it is. Fixed assets might also be given codes to create a register of assets that the company owns and their location. This can then be used to either charge out the cost to the assets to departments, or to check that it's been secured, kept secured by the manager. So, for example, that our construction workforce has not taken the assets home for the weekend to do some work on the house, or our laptops have not been stolen and have been sold by staff on eBay. You have 3 types of questions in the exam. What's the point of a code? You might have some kind of scenario kind of thing, and there's a series of things, and you're sort of highlighting, yeah, that's the point of this code. Rare that question. This one, this one here, you have loads of that in there, because you're going to have to create codes to complete parts of the 5-stage account system, either to complete a sales invoice or a purchase invoice or an order or what have you in there. All the product codes that will go into it, all the customer codes, all the supplier codes will all be there. You'll be creating those ones. Key point in this part of the question really is read the question and don't make a silly mistake. It'll typically be an alphanumeric code in there, and there'll be a little separator between hand. So here we go. So 3 letters here, ATT, and 3 numbers 003, and the separator is. And is the separator a dash? Is it a backslash? Is it a forward slash? Is it a backslash? Is it there's no separator at all? And then the last question will be name the type of code. Is it alphanumeric, numeric, alphabetic, blocks, or hierarchical? Should have those type of questions that we're going to sort of see in here. This one we've done lots of already in chapters 1 to 13, and then in this one is a new one where we're going to sort of go through and see the names. So let's start to see what the names are, the codes, and then what we can have. So here we have within the general ledger, and it's sometimes referred to as a nominal ledger. So accountants of my age might refer to it as the nominal ledger. There's 2 types of codes. General ledger account codes. So the general ledger account codes are the account codes that you've been seeing so far: sales, purchases, whatever. Those denote the particular types of action, what it is, and what is this income or expense or asset, and what have you. Then we're going to have cost codes, and then the profit and cost centers here that are set out within our business. So they're going to be set out in our business here. And really that's sort of designed to sort of split up our business into the sort of various areas, and really to be able to assign by manager. That's what we're really trying to do here. So we've got our nominal ledger codes in what it is. We might have sales here, we might have 2 products. And here we might have wages here. One's for producing product 1, one's for production 2. There's the finance department here and the HR department. How much are they keeping to within their costs, whatever. So we have general ledger codes and cost codes. This allows a big number in the general ledger T account, the total, to be broken down into smaller T accounts based upon the cost codes. Very much about digital systems, this really. We'll see that a lot of this in digital systems. I don't think manual systems can really handle cost coding to a significant extent. In the supplementary ledgers, stock, fixed assets, sales and purchases, etc., the codes will be based upon the needs of the company and the tasks typically to maintain transactions. So when we sort of go out into the other ones like our stock codes and whatever, or our fixed assets codes, very much going to be dependent on the business, how well to track it. And if we're in a warehouse, we might have a lot of codes to be able to find particular locations and types of item and what have you. So in terms of our types of codes, then what have we got in terms of code type? Well, a code might be numeric. This is where a code is just a number, so here's the person's memory is not likely to be a factor in remembering what the code is. So in terms of not just what the codes are, but why. And that when you're trying to search for things within a digital system, you're either going to fire some a code in there because there's no issue about memory. There's no coding point in here, or alternatively, the actual numbers themselves have a meaning, and that actually makes point in terms of locations. There's in hierarchical coding we'll see in a second. So there's no memory, like the supplier name is not going to be a factor in numeric code. So you're not going to sort of, let's say, Johnson's cleaners or whatever in there. You want to put in JOH as the first three letters, trying to see which Johnson's type of suppliers have we got in there, and then I think 3 or 4 of them come up, and then you pick Johnson's cleaners. It's not really memory's not a factor in this particular type of code here. So typically this will be something like general ledger codes that we'll be using numeric ones. It doesn't really matter there though. In real life, it's useful or advisable not to have code starting with zeros, because when you extract those out from your system into Excel takes all the zeros off the front. Not part of the exam. This is just simple real life, and I have seen people, or it is a bugbear, where you sort of get along and somebody set up a coding system that starts with zeros. You pull the data out into Excel, and all the zeros all disappear, and now you've got codes that aren't actually what we're using. What it does is, let's say it turns a code that will be 8 characters long now into a code that's sort of 7, but then some of them there's one that does begin with a 1 rather than 0, because they've gone 0 to 100 or whatever. It's just makes it a nonsense. Alphabetical. This is where the code's just letters here. Here's the person's memory could be a determining factor. So we might want to now put in our supplier name or our customer name to get to draw up the account from the sales ledger, let's say. The problem is it's going to be limited by the fact that there might be 2 or more similar names. So there might be two suppliers that have been set up as Johnson's. Johnson's Toyota and Johnson's the cleaners. So we might have a problem here. And to get around that, what we have then is, if we're using, let's say, the first 3 letters of the supplier's name, so we've got JOH, we've got 2 JOHs here, one's for Johnson's Toyota and one for Johnson's Cleaners. How do we get around that? Well, we're going to add some numbers onto the end of that, and that's going to be an alphanumeric code. So we're going to have a mixture of numbers and letters, or a mixture of letters and numbers. Typically, it's going to be the letters first and the numbers after. Now, in an exam, there's going to be a separator between them. There might be, or there might not. There might be no separator at all. There might be a little dash. There might be a backslash, a forward slash, or whatever. And you're entering the alphabet code in there. Or alternatively, it might be a product code. In terms of, we've got several different types of stapler, and they're going to have the stat as the first part of it, so it's designated stapler. Then we're going to have some kind of separator, and then we're going to have some numbers in terms of stapler 1, stapler 2, stapler 3, stapler 4, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to use alphametric numeric codes for, in terms of entering into all the various different source documents. Now, in terms of blocks, if we were to number our codes sequentially from 1 to 100 with no gaps at all, whilst this might initially work, it's going to assume these problems. So let's say take a company who sets up the cost codes from 1 to 100, and as managers request new codes, they get the next code in line. Pretty soon, Manager A is going to have code 1, 5, 33, and 73, and Manager B is going to have codes 2, 6, 34, and 42. They're just getting them all in line. There's no sort of together. So any report you extract from the system is just a jumbled mess of data going backwards and forwards between the managers. The same could be with general ledger codes, where you end up with product 1 being 001, but product 10's code being, for sales of product 10's code being 101, and several expenses in between. all the wages are all mixed up, all the non-staff costs are all mixed up, all the sales are all mixed up, it's a total jumbled mess really. If we block codes, so we're going to now leave gaps between the codes. So we're going to have, let's say, our sales are going to be 1 to 100, our purchase is going to be 101 to 200 in our general ledger code. As a new product is added, it's now close to all of the other sales codes. It makes it much easier to extract reports. So, in terms of whether what is a block code and what is it all about, really, it's about that ability to just try and get the codes to be in blocks. So it might you might have a question of saying, sales are 1 to 100, purchases are 200 to 300, although 1 to 100 I don't like because it would have 001 there, but it's just an example. And then you might sort of say, right, okay, then the next code that's to be set up is a purchase one, and it goes to the next one. So instead of going, just next to the one, whatever the sales one was, it'll be whatever is in the block of the purchase ones. Don't tend to see that as a question, but it's possible that the examiner might eventually get around to inventing one. The structure of codes and feature flexibility is an important point that's often overlooked in real life. So in real life, this tends to not block codes, which should be used in there, and the way in which we sort of set this out in terms of not having the zeros is often overlooked. It's quite very few accountants really sort of tend to sort of do it, which is annoying when you're auditing in there. The reason why it's important is it does allow data to be extracted from the finance system and then analysed in Excel or Power BI. Without an effective coding structure, you then have to sort of go and put additional steps into reorder and sort the data. So in real life, what you do is, let's say you've lost all the zeros, you have to then concatenate 2 zeros, or whatever the zeros you've lost, into the front of the code, but you have to add up the number of codes, numbers within the code as well. So let's say, one of them has 001, 555, or whatever, and it's an 8 series code. The other one has 101, whatever. So that one's got 8 characters in. The other one's only got 6 now because we lost two zeros. You have to concatenate and put 2 zeros. Well, you have to first all add up. Has it got less than the 8 characters? That's a len calculation. Then you have to put an equation in there that adds the 2 in the front, concatenate it in there, and then you have to put a little dash before it. It's a bit of a nightmare, really. Don't do it. Don't start. Code your things effectively, and then you make your life a heck of a lot easier when you try to produce reports later on. Now, in hierarchical coding structures, the hierarchical coding structure is a code that has hierarchical layers to the code. So, for example, the art department might sit within faculty 4. The book purchaser within the visual art department may be in their own cost code assigned to a particular staff member. So a cost code might be 4321, which is faculty 4, the art department number 3, which is the cost code 3, the visual arts section of the art department, that's code number 2, and the budgets assigned to staff member X, that's the number 1. Hierarchical codes often make it easy to find codes that need to be entered into to generate a source document or authorize a transaction. So it's sort of you know your faculty 4, you know your art department, you basically know who the person is here. In a library, it might allow a person to be directed more easily to a book. Let's say it's in the art section, on the visual art section, 2/3 the way along, and look for book number 15 or something like that. Or in a warehouse that I had a location of products. So these hierarchical codes have meaning. There's something behind each one of those numbers. They're not just sort of slapped together. By definition, that's creating blocks as well. So in terms of our codes, then, just remember you're going to have those 3 types of codes. What's the point? It's rare to see that really. Lots of then creation of the codes. Don't muck it up. Easy marks on this one then, and then just this naming of this coding between these ones here. Those are the names in the syllabus, and then it's just going to say 3 letters and 3 numbers. That's an alphanumeric code.